I remember being here 20 years ago when I started at Stanislaus. So nervous. And here I am 20 years later, still nervous. Every experience in our lives influences who we become. For me, my struggles as a child are and will continue to drive and motivate me to create change in the lives of those I serve. I was raised in the small rural town of South Dos Palos. My parents were immigrant farm workers. They came to America for that great American dream. Their hope was that their 4 children would have a better life through opportunities made possible through higher education. And we did. She has a civil engineer, 2 teachers, and a lawyer. I entered school speaking only Spanish and quickly realized that to some teachers, I was seen as an extra obstacle in their already difficult job. Even as a kid, it wasn't hard for me to see how they felt. Because of my many struggles, I didn't like school. I hated being there. The truth is that a student becomes what the adults in their lives expect of them. As teachers, we have a lot more power than we sometimes think. How we make our students feel will directly affect our success as teachers, as well as how our students see their time with us. When you get down to it and analyze just how much time our students spend with us, it's not difficult to see why teachers have an enormous say in how a student's outlook in life and their ability to persevere will develop. I know that the factors that students are living with make us feel powerless sometimes. But I also know from personal experience that teachers can be that one source that is the key to changing a child's life in a positive way. I had a difficult student not too long ago, the type that makes us question our decision to be teachers. This student had a history that was well known, but I go into each year with the thought that I will be that difference maker in these type of students. As the school year begins, I greet each student as they enter my class to teach them about being polite and looking at someone when they're speaking, which I personally feel is important to their success. When he came up, he rolled his eyes and walked in without saying a word. I called him back and smiled. I looked at him with an even bigger smile and once again said, "Good morning." The fact that I had a big cheesy smile made him laugh and he said, "Good morning," grunted and then walked away. At least I got that good morning out of him. You gotta focus on the little victories. Throughout the year, I would have talks with him, especially when he would get into trouble, which happened very often. After some time, he began to open up and would tell me stories of his life. Wow, this 11-year-old is going through some serious struggles. His parents had been out of the picture all his life. He lives with great-grandparents in their 80s, and his siblings are aggressive and dealing with serious behavior problems as well. He went from being a cold, mean-spirited kid to helping me with extra chores that I would do during recess. A month before school was over, he got in a fight for the 2nd time in a week and got suspended. I was very disappointed with him because he had improved so much from the beginning of the year. When he returned from his suspension, I sat him down and I had a heartfelt talk with him about making better decisions and how important he was to me. This cold, difficult child that had never had a bit of emotion began to cry and apologize for letting me down. Still remember, "I will try harder, Mr. Alba," he said. Before this day, he would just blame everyone else and would give me attitude. After this, I thought to myself, yes, I finally reached him. Then came the last week of school. During the entire last week of school, he once again began to give me attitude for absolutely no reason. Dirty looks and angry outbursts became the norm, and I thought to myself, what happened? Then the last day of school came, and from the moment he arrived to the end of the day, he was crying. The last day of my class is always quite emotional. I do focus on creating a family-like environment, but I didn't expect him to feel so upset. Our class had become one of the few positive experiences he had had in school, and after that day, it would be over. At the end of the day, he went to my desk in tears, didn't say a word. He gave me a hug and left. As teachers, we don't always know the impact that we make on our students, but if we make every effort to be a positive part of our students' lives, we will make a difference. We all have teachers that we remember as life changers. They saw something in us. They made us feel as if the world was ours and that whatever our dream was, that it could be achieved. For me, my first experience with such a teacher was in 4th grade. By this age, I had gotten to the point where I was constantly being sent to the office. Mr. Thornburn was different. He saw something in me, and for that entire year, taught me to focus on the positives. Mr. Thornburn made me believe that I could be a success. Because of him, I became fascinated with research and found that I really enjoyed learning about science and history. He would even give me special projects that would give me a chance to shine in front of my classmates. In his class, I was no longer the Spanish-speaking kid that seemed to always be in trouble. I became the top researcher, an overall good egg, as he would like to say. And I was always a curious kid. In fact, that got me in trouble throughout my childhood. Growing up surrounded by fields, I learned many things. One of those things was how spikelets of weed hulls would make my skin itch. I shared this with my friends, and next thing you know, we were making itching powder to sell as a gag gift at school. Don't do that. I didn't really think it was such a bad idea, but a teacher caught me and told Mr. Thornburn. Mr. Thornburn's reaction changed everything for me. There was a compassion and an understanding in his smile that made me want to be better. I had always had teachers that would get very upset with me for the smallest infraction. Mr. Thornburn sat me down, looked me straight in my face, and with the most serious look asked, "Do you have a business license to sell itching powder?" I didn't know what that was. He explained what a business license was, and then went on as to why it was a bad idea to sell a powder that would irritate the skin of other students. As a 10-year-old who had only experienced being yelled at, I was just a little surprised by this very detailed and well-thought-out explanation. The fact that I still remember this and other stories about Mr. Thornburn reminds me of how much of an impact he made in my life. Though he was such a great force in my life, the saddest thing is, I never really thanked him. I didn't see it until years later, but now think about him and how he ran his class every year that I have taught. He made an impact in my life and in the lives of all my students that cannot ever be measured. His influence on me has been my guide as I continue to try to impact the lives of every single student that I have. Mr. Thornburn only taught for 1 year in my town. He was different, maybe too different, and after several complaints, decided to move. He was an innovator that changed the way I saw myself and what I could achieve. Before him, all I ever heard was about the importance of taking a test, or you need to pass this or you're going to fail. Now, with the pressures that we face as teachers, it seems that the focus is only on the successful performance on the state exam and not on how we teach our students to grow as individuals. Fair or not, we are judged by how well our students do on these tests. This pressure can change our focus, and we can overlook the importance of teaching the whole child. We lose a little bit of our compassion when we are forced to put a test first. Now, I understand that there's a great deal of pressure in teaching. I know this pressure well. But the greatest lesson that I have learned with my 15 years is that when we focus on helping our students grow as individuals and show them that we understand and appreciate their struggles, that everything else seems to fall into place. Though my focus is not on the state tests, my success in this test has been exceptional because my students know that my greatest focus is their individual success as people. And because of this, they work harder than they ever had before. I never did get to thank Mr. Thornburn for what he did for me, but every single time that a student thanks me at the end of the year or comes back to visit and reminisce about what my class has meant to them, I think about those special teachers that made such a special difference in my life. I know that my success is not just my success. It is a continuation of Mr. Thornburn's lessons and hope and passion that he instilled in me 30 years ago. What other profession has such an impact on our world? There isn't one. This is a room filled with life changers. Never forget just how much change you can make. You may never get that thank you that you deserve, but know that you will be remembered for how you make your students see their world. Do you remember that teacher that made a difference in your life? Think back right now about that teacher. Raise your hand when you have that teacher in mind. Pretty quick, isn't it? Remember that you could be that teacher to your students. Every step, every word, and the way you make them feel can be the difference in the lives of your students. Soon we will return to our classrooms and prepare to teach a new group. Go into that classroom knowing the power that you have to make our world a better place. Be a Mr. Thornburn and create an impact in your students that will continue to generate that positive force in the lives of all you served and in the lives that they will encounter. Thank you.